Right, welcome back. This is New Day, and for this segment, we'd like to do a bit more business. We want to look at how Ghanaian SMEs are engaging with multinationals working in Ghana, and how, if you are an SME watching and listening to us, you can also step up your game and get to engage better with multinationals operating here in Ghana. And to help us do the discussion, I've been joined by William Pullen, who is the Programs Director for InvestinAfrica. He's here with us. Welcome, William.
Thank you, John.
And Ibrahima, who is the African Partner Pool Manager, and he also works with InvestinAfrica, and they'll be here to help us do the discussion. So, gentlemen, welcome into the studios.
Thank you, John.
Thank you.
Let me start from you, Ibrahima. So, there are a number of issues on the minds of people regarding how SMEs, Ghanaian SMEs, can engage with multinationals. But I'm sure from the line of work or from what you do, you have come to understand what the major problems are that has created a gap between multinationals operating here in Ghana and Ghanaian SMEs operating here in Ghana. So from your experience and your background, can you tell us what really the issues are when it comes to engaging multinationals with local businesses here in Ghana?
Thank you, John. I think, to put it quite simply, it's always been a difficulty in communication, really. The multinationals are so large that when they come into a country to do business, they come with their existing supply chain, and processes already defined and developed in their home countries. And that makes it difficult for local companies to get involved in that supply chain. They wouldn't even know when there are opportunities that arise within those organizations. So I think for us it's been key that we've been able to identify that disconnect in the communication, and to develop the online portal that we currently use, which is called the African Partner Pool, which directly connects small medium enterprises to big multinationals, where they'll be able to see the tenders that are put on there by big multinationals, RFQs, requests for proposals, transparent process in supply chain development. And I think as we go along, perhaps you'll see some of the success stories. Great. And indeed how we've been able to ensure that SMEs are able to get involved in the big multinationals.
Thank you, Ibrahima, for those opening comments. Let me come back to you, William. You have been a part of trying to solve the problem that exists between multinationals and then local SMEs. So not just in Ghana, you also work in Kenya as well, and you get to engage with the local businesses and how they interface or work with the multinationals. That brings in the question of what exactly InvestinAfrica is doing here in Ghana, for example, to bridge the gap between the multinationals and then SMEs in Ghana. Can you throw more light on what you are doing to create a solution to this problem or this disconnect between the multinationals and then the Ghanaian SMEs?
Sure. Thank you, John. So I think consistent from Ghana to Kenya is the big three things that provide a huge challenge to SMEs is access to finance, access to markets or opportunities like the tenders Mina was talking to, and access to skills. So it's finance, markets and skills. And traditionally you'll see NGOs, development organizations, corporates themselves will tackle perhaps one of those, maybe two, but it's very difficult to get all three into one initiative. And that's what we're trying to do in InvestinAfrica, provide local SMEs with access to skills, markets and finance in one place, in a much more transparent, independent and trustworthy environment. So the African Partner Pool that Mino talked about, that provides access to tenders and opportunities and to the multinational supply chain. So that's the markets, if you like, ticked, although there's still a long way to go. The finance we're providing through our banking partners. We're delighted here in Ghana to be working so closely.
To the question, you see, working with Ghanaian SMEs, what's the kind of impressions you get with them? Do you think that Ghanaian SMEs are ready to do business, or you think that there's a lot of work that Ghanaian SMEs will have to do in order to get to that level where they can engage, with multinationals? Because the conversation always is around the fact that Ghana is ready for business and all that, but you engage directly with SMEs on the ground. Do you get the sense of feeling that indeed Ghanaian SMEs are ready for international business?
Absolutely, John. I think when you look throughout Africa and the developing world at large, Ghanaians always come out on top as being very entrepreneurial in the way we look at life. We have a few challenges which I'm not going to dismiss, in that Ghanaian companies are ready for business. However, perhaps they don't have the necessary scale. They're not large enough to be able to compete globally. And I think that's where the work that InvestinAfrica is trying to ensure that they first of all have access to markets, have access to the right finance so that they can scale up their businesses and then be able to compete nationally and indeed globally. And Société Générale is also one of our banks as part of the African Partner Pool, and they're also offering access to finance to our SMEs that are successful on the African Partner Pool. But I think it's also important that Ghanaian businesses understand that there's nothing wrong with joint venturing. Yeah. There's nothing wrong with coming together with somebody else to create a much larger organization that can then compete. And I think part of the lessons that we've learned through our work is that people want to go it all alone. And that may not necessarily, always get you the right result.
Okay, so let's look beyond Invest in Africa. Let's look beyond the African Partner Pool. At least you've gotten the opportunity to engage with organizations in Kenya as well as in Ghana. Now, when we talk about the Ghanaian context, the multinationals, people believe that the multinationals shy away from engaging in local businesses, but we in Ghana are interested in getting business for our people here in Ghana. So from your engagement, what do you suspect is the issue why generally a multinational rather prefer to outsource a business to a non-Ghanaian entity, for example, since you get to judge with them at that level and you're able to get into their thinking? What seems to be the major issue?
I think most multinationals generally would rather source locally, but I think you have a very difficult parity between the short-term commercial realities of running their business, a multinational's business. They need things now to run the business, and yet the capacity in market that you need to build takes time. So in the interim period, there may be things that need to come from elsewhere, but as long as there is a intent to build the capacity locally from both sides, the multinationals and the SMEs, and of course government has a role to play, as do organizations like ours, then you will get there in the end. So I think part of the challenge that I think Mino was talking about there is that the SMEs here, they are ready, but they have to be patient and have to be prepared to invest in their business for the long term. And you're not going to suddenly start winning opportunities from multinationals even maybe 2 or 3 years after you set up your business. You have to be prepared to invest in the business to get it to the standard so that you can start to work with these larger corporations. So I think the challenge between the short-term commercial needs and operational needs of these businesses and what's actually available here in country is something that's not going to go away. But we're working so that in 2 years' time we're in a better situation. In 5 years' time we're in an even better situation, and in 10 years' time, then hopefully we can source everything that we need here in Ghana.
Okay, so Mino, most local businesses assume that if there's a financial difficulty or they don't have access to funding or finance, it becomes a limiting factor to them doing business. But there are a lot of local businesses who are watching us. So beyond the avenue you provide through the African Partner Pool, let's put that aside. But generally, let's try and speak to the issues where a typical Ghanaian business that is interested in progressing or making strides with regards to business investment can go around the issue of finance, because it appears from all the research that has been done that finance becomes a major issue. How would you, or what would you advise the local businessman to do if the person is determined, or the business is determined, to go around that hole or that kind of gap that is finances?
John, I think it's critical that business owners need to be cognizant of the fact that finance is not cheap in our environment, and we're quite happy that the Bank of Ghana has reduced their policy rate yesterday by 50 basis points. But I think that's just a step in the right direction. It's not really the solution. I think that policy rate has to go a lot lower in order for commercial banks to be able to lend and SMEs to be able to access that finance. SMEs need to stop being more innovative in the way they do their business. It's important for you to realize that you need to constantly evolve as a business person, to introduce different ways of running your business to ensure that you scale up, so that you can then try and defeat the challenges of access to capital, access to finance. And like I mentioned earlier, it's also important for you to joint venture with someone. Joint venture, you may have the necessary skills, you may not have the financial capacity. Someone may have the financial capacity but may not have the technical expertise. In that way, then you can create something that can go global.
Okay, well, let's talk about taxation. Typically, businesses will run away from issues of taxation, but taxation is an important part if you are bent on working with multinational companies, because they're interested in your tax returns, as to whether you file your tax returns and all that. But usually or conventionally, the typical business person wouldn't want to, do issues of taxes and all that. But how do you see taxes as very important to helping local businesses to bridge the gap with the multinationals?
Yeah, I mean, for us, it's critical. It's one of those misunderstood areas. I think there's a lot of suspicion from SMEs around, if I file tax returns, X, Y, Z might happen. But on the other side, you've got multinationals and larger corporates wanting to work with SMEs who have filed tax returns. They want to see the transparency. They want to see the integrity of the business. So it's absolutely critical, and it's not something that should be an arduous process. It's not something that takes a huge amount of time. There are, of course, accountants there to help with it. But if you don't file the tax returns, or you choose that that's something you're not going to do, then you immediately put a glass ceiling on your business. And it's one of a number of glass ceilings that you as the business owner can control and can smash, along with other sort of standards around whether it be anti-bribery and corruption policies, health and safety policies, succession planning. These are all sorts of things we try to help them with, because typically they're missing, but there's no need for them to be missing, and they provide an immediate limit on the size of your business. So if you insist on not filing tax returns, the likelihood is you will never work with a larger multinational corporation. So you immediately limit the size of the pie, the market that you can be playing in.
Okay, so let's talk about standards. We'll raise an important issue of standards, and we're in a global world, so local businesses will have to meet the international standards. So what are some of the ways you think that local businesses can indeed raise their standards in order to engage with multinationals? Because we've heard several stories where people get businesses with multinationals, but along the line the contract is terminated as a result of poor standards or one or two things that are missing in terms of their engagement with the multinationals. What will be your advice from your point of view to local businesses on the importance of building international standards in order to do very good business here in Ghana?
Yeah, so John, on our website, africanpartnerpool.com, we've got a portion that's called the Business Growth Hub. It's an online library that provides access to information on how you can provide your organization the necessary standards that are required. How can you get an ISO certificate?
Not to cut you, but people say we don't like reading. So what else can you do? Because the typical businessman is all about making sure my business is running, moving from here to here, looking for contracts and searching for contracts and all that. So how do we inculcate that habit of people indeed lifting up the standards when it comes to international standards?
Yeah.
So beyond what's on your pool, what else can be done to ensure that the people that matter in SMEs are able to improve or lift up the game?
Yeah, so we hold a lot of forums and workshops where we try and demystify these things. We try and bring it out, the importance and the need for quality standards. We're currently working with the Ghana Standards Authority to bring out the need for standards. A lot of people hear about the Ghana Standards Authority, but they don't really know the work that they do. They don't really know how to go about getting a certification from them, how to get my product standardized so that it can meet international requirements. And I think for us, the important thing is to bring these things out there so that the local Ghanaian SMEs are able to know, how do I go about getting my goods standardized? And indeed, we will be hosting one of our forums tomorrow at the Accra International Conference Center, where we will bring out the need for information on quality standards. I think it's not an easy process. It's something that we need to take step by step, but it's important that we start having these forums where people then become aware of that need. Okay. Because let me just
quickly
talk about the fact that you get a lot of multinationals talking about an ISO certification or anti-bribery and anti-corruption certification. But what about Ghanaian certification? We've got the Ghana Integrity Initiative. Right. What about their certification? We need to make sure that those certifications are also as valuable as an international one or an ISO one that we have locally as well.
Well, I'll give you the final words. Ghanaian business, do you see that light at the end of the tunnel, that indeed Ghanaian businesses can meet the international requirements and we can get to do business not only in Ghana but even beyond Ghana as well?
Yeah, absolutely. And beyond, I think once there's been another successful and peaceful election in Ghana, as there always has been, we're hoping that we're going to see business ramp up. Perhaps people that have been sitting on the sidelines or sitting on the fence waiting for this period to close out will be investing again, and business will pick up. But I see no reason to be pessimistic about Ghana's future. I think the challenges that have been there for the last year or so are definitely being worked on, and the signs look positive. I think the drop in interest rates is indicative of that. The slightly better fiscal circumstances are all pointing in the right direction.
Yeah. All right. So let me say thank you to William Pullen, who's the director for InvestinAfrica, and then a big thank you to Ibrahim Aminu, who's also the African Partner Pool Manager and works with InvestinAfrica as well. And for the Ghanaian businesses out there, this is an opportunity for you to grow. Stick and stay with us. We'll be back.